G'day there everyone, Daniel Anderson here. Now when we're preparing to roll Copilot out, one of the main areas and a big topic of conversation is getting your data and security and access to content prepared so that things, when people start to ask and interact with Copilot, that they're not getting back responses and getting access to information that they shouldn't do. Now, one of the areas that we can focus on is the oversharing of content. Now, there's something that we can implement and we can look at straight away is around our sharing links and the settings that we have at our tenant level and at our site level that can help control the oversharing of content. Now, by default, and unfortunately by default, the setting at the tenant level that we've got is anyone, the anyone link, all right? So it's kind of like anonymous. So anybody with a link to a particular document can access that document. Now that's both internally and externally. Okay, so every time a staff member creates or your employees create a type of link, then it really has the potential, if not educated or settings or guardrails aren't in place, it does have the potential to open up a lot of holes or gaps or access to content that people ordinarily shouldn't have. But what can we do and how can we set this? So what we're going to do in this video is have a look at the external sharing settings at the tenant level, but then also at the SharePoint site level, to just help put some guardrails in place, some defaults in place that are going to allow for, I guess, a more controlled type of environment. Now, we're going to start at the tenant level. So we're going to pop into the SharePoint Admin Center. Now, we can see on the screen here, I'm in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. On the left-hand pane here, I'm just going to jump into SharePoint, and then under the Policies blade of the SharePoint Admin Center is where we will find our sharing settings. So we can see here, it's going to open up, and we've got a couple of sliders here, both for SharePoint and also with OneDrive. Okay, so notice there that OneDrive does have its own slider, but what is important to know is that you can't set OneDrive to be more permissive than SharePoint. Okay, and we can see we've got anyone in, and this is just a default setting here. So what we can do is we can make and slide these sliders down so that they are at different levels. All right, so we can go up and down, we can go up on the SharePoint side, up on the OneDrive side. But what you'll notice is that I can't, because SharePoint's set at this level, new and existing guests, I can't put OneDrive up to anyone. So that's where we can set our, I guess, our default external sharing settings. Something to look at, because the default is anyone with a link. Now, we can also, under here, have a look at the more external sharing settings as well. We can limit external sharing by domains. We can allow only users with specific security groups to share externally. Guests must sign in. Allow guests to share items they don't own. So again, this one here is something that we might want to review at the tenant level as well. Now, another often overlooked setting here is the permissions that's selected by default when we're sharing. So we can see, again, by default, it's set to edit permission, but we can change this at the tenant level to be view permission. So then what that means is when a user goes to share a document, the default is always view, and they have to actually go in and set and change that to edit if they want to make that change. Okay, now let's have a look at what we can do. So this is at the tenant level. Now, what we can also do is do this at the SharePoint site level. So here in the SharePoint Admin Center, I do have all of my active SharePoint sites. We can see that we've got group connected, team connected sites, communication sites, lots of different types of sites here. Now, what we can do is we can select our SharePoint site, and then we can jump into sharing. Now, this is at this site level. All right, so we can have our specific SharePoint sharing settings at the site level. We can see here, we've got anyone, new and existing, and we've got the same levels here that we saw at the tenant level. We've got that at our SharePoint site level. Down here, we've got the same sharing link type, so we can then inherit. If we don't want to, or if you want to have different levels here to that of the organization, then we can change this. Only sort of, if let's say we want to just limit it to people with existing access, then we can do that as well. Same thing with the default link permissions. We can set that as default at this particular site level, or we can just reset it to our organization and inherit from there. Now, what happens, what we might do is let's have a look at what happens when we change our sharing settings. So I'm just going to pop down to, let's go to existing guests. All right, so only guests already in the orgs directory. So they've been added to the directory, that they're the people that we can share with. Okay, so you'll notice here, file and folder links, we can choose, and this is all grayed out here. Now, if we slid this all the way up to the top, both up to the top here, you can see that this becomes active. And this is choose the type of link that's selected by default. Okay, so again, we'll slide this down to existing guests. We'll hit save. And now let's have a look, and we'll jump into our active sites. We'll choose our benefits site again. We'll go to sharing. Now what we can see, it's a little bit different. We've got now two grayed out that we can't select because we've set this at the tenant level. So we've got existing guests only, or only people in your organization. All right, because we can't, because we've set these levels at the tenant level, we can't override and go above that. All right, so again, down here, we can though change these default sharing link types to whatever we would like. So if we've got edit at the top level or at the tenant level, now this site here, we want to always say that it's always view permissions by default. Okay, and then here, the default sharing link type is only people in your organization. So if I hit save to that now, we'll hit save. Those sharing settings have been updated successfully. Now, if I open up our benefits site, and we'll jump into the document library inside of our benefits site. So we'll wait for this to load. And then we'll jump in, I'll just jump into site contents here, and our documents, and then we'll hit the sharing link, and let's have a look at what these defaults are. So I'll hit share, and what we'll see here is that we've got people in our organization, and then we've got the view as the default, the default setting there. So we can do that and customize that on a per site level. So that's just one area when we're preparing for, even if you're not preparing for Copilot, but in particular when you're preparing for Copilot, what we want to do is prevent this oversharing of content and opening up these potential gaps and holes in our content. Have a look at those sharing settings. If you're a SharePoint admin, jump into the SharePoint Admin Center, have a look at the tenant level settings, and then also at a particular granular site level. Unfortunately, we can't do a bulk update inside the SharePoint Admin Center, but we can do it on an individual site level. So I hope that brings you some value today. External sharing, oversharing. There's a few things and the guardrails that we can put in place right now. So get across all of those settings. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.